Psalm 92, ready for, well, let's go back real quickly to verse 10. You have made me as strong as a wild ox. You have anointed me with the finest oil. Two vastly different word pictures, poetic word pictures. And they basically, the strong as a wild ox is you have strengthened me. And that's the main, when you're in a dilemma, when you're under stress, when you're under pressure, you need strength. So, yeah, duh. And the other, you anoint my head with finest oil. That's a signal of honor, even designation. Okay. Verse 11, my eyes have seen the downfall of my enemies. My ears have heard the defeat of my wicked opponents. We don't always get that. Have you noticed? Yeah. Every once in a while, I hear, I don't actually hear well, sometimes I do. Because of how real time media has become. But on the other hand, I hear about it. And then there's this. I don't have any personal enemies like that. You probably don't either. Okay, keep going. My ears have heard the defeat of my wicked opponents. Israel seemed always, and even today, seems to be that there are all kinds of wicked opponents. You don't have to look very far into history. You don't have to look very far past today's newspaper to realize Israel is still being violently opposed by enemies. I do care, but I suppose it doesn't matter much where you stand on the war in Israel and Gaza. But I don't mean this politically. I'm just saying realistically, if you don't see Hamas for what it is, you're living in denial. This is a wicked opponent of Israel. I mean, their stated goal in their mission is to eradicate, eliminate, murder the Jewish race. Well, there were opponents in the day in which Psalm 92 was written who had the same desire, the same motivating goal. The psalmist says, because of God's goodness, because of his faithfulness, because of what God is doing and has done, their opponents are defeated. Well, all right, now, then he goes on, verse 12, another contrast. But the godly will flourish like palm trees and grow strong like the cedars of Lebanon. Talked about palm trees and all of that. The cedars of Lebanon, you have to do some historical background, and what you'll discover about the cedars of Lebanon in this day in which the psalm was written, the cedars of Lebanon were considered the most beautiful and most prime of all the woods that could be found and used in the region around the Mediterranean there. When you go, if you get to go to Israel, you'll realize that in such an arid part of the world, wood becomes very precious. Now, Israel's not a desert. But if you cross the Jordan River east into Jordan, when we got to go there, on the way in, I thought they could have used this for, that opening scene in Star Wars on that planet, the desert planet. I mean, that's what it looked like. Okay, the cedars of Lebanon. The cedars were strong. The wood was beautiful. Then in verse 13, for they are transplanted to the Lord's own house. Now, wait a second. You didn't have palm trees growing in the temple, okay? You didn't have, but you did have the cedars of Lebanon on the walls. They're transplanted to the Lord's house. What in the world? They flourish in the courts of God. Okay, are we talking about palm trees? No, we're talking about the godly. For a Jew, their highest dream, their highest aspiration was to dwell, to live in the temple. And so there's this connection there. And then it's kind of put into hyperdrive with the idea that they flourish. Not only are they transplanted, but they flourish in the courts of our God. Is that a literal thing, or are we talking about, again, some poetic symbolism? I think it's got to be the poetic symbolism, right? Let's take it even a step further. How does that, what's in that for us? First of all, there is no temple anymore. It was destroyed in 70 AD. We live almost halfway across the globe from where the temple was. So it comes down to this. In the New Testament, Paul writes that our bodies are the temple of God. That we are the house where God dwells, where God lives. The godly will flourish in the courts of our God. Where's the courts of our God today? They're here. There's a lot to that, but I think you can get the meaning and the picture from the idea that we, godly people, flourish in the courts of our God, and the courts of our God are here. See, this is not a geographic, locational kind of thing. This is not about your physical where you are. This is about the spiritual where you are. And that's worth thinking about and dwelling on. And okay. In verse 14, even in old age, they will still produce fruit. They will remain vital and green. The older I get, the more I like that idea. I'm not against retirement. I'm in a season of my life where I am more retired than I want to be. But the thing about retirement, and there are all kinds of studies that actually demonstrate this fact, but when a person, man or woman, is no longer doing something that they believe, they feel is contributing to others, the odds of them dying soon are very high. I mean, there's a lot of, you've heard stories, guy retires, been looking forward to retirement for 10 years. They finally retire, and 2 years later they die. But some of it is because they had no meaningful, productive endeavors left. In old age, I want to still produce fruit. Now, here's something I've learned. Or maybe I would say, I don't know that I've learned it, but I've discovered it for myself. At my age, I have to be much more intentional about producing fruit than I needed to be when I was in my 50s. In my 50s, it seemed like all day, every day, I had a chance to produce fruit. Now, not so much. If you're, not in my demographic, if you're younger, all I'm going to say is, well, the main thing I want to say is, what you're doing now, don't quit. Keep producing fruit. Now make sure you're producing the right kind of fruit, but keep producing and bear that pattern, continue that pattern all the way until you can't any longer. My dream, my goal as an old guy is I want to contribute until I physically can't contribute anymore. I'm not going to work a 50-hour work week anymore. I'm not going to be booked back to back to back to back anymore. I'm not going to go into an office and I don't have the responsibilities for that kind of occupational life. But I don't want to just sit in a chair and watch TV. I want to contribute. They flourish in the courts of God. Even in old age, they still produce fruit. They will remain vital and green. Now, another discovery I've made is for me to remain vital and green, I have to take care of the tree. I have to take care of myself, my body, and that has to do with many things, but among the most important are my diet and my exercise. There are things that, in order to remain vital and green, we get to partner with God. And those things I'm taking as seriously as I know how to. And I recommend that every follower of Jesus pays attention to the physical and the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. These are the 4 dimensions that I think describe every person's existence. All right. Verse 15. They will declare, the Lord is just. He is my rock. There is no evil in him. We've talked about declaring before. Who do you declare this to? The Lord is just. He is my rock. There is no evil in him. Who do I declare that to? Well, I think I must be able to declare that to other people. Now, I have to be wise about how I do that. And here's the other thing. Have you noticed that when someone declares something that their lifestyle, their behaviors, their choices contradicts, what they declare becomes less valuable? Well, there's that. The other is I need to declare this to myself every day. I've talked about that before, the bookends of our day, declaring the everlasting love of God in the morning and his faithfulness at night. I declare that to myself because I easily forget it. Going to come back and finish up next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.